गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुरेव परं ब्रह्मा तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः. So in last class, not only we saw that for the fear of the Brahman, all the elements like the fire, sun, wind and the death, all of them behave. So also we saw in the 4th verse that in this life the only goal of a human being is to attain that reality before the physical death happens, and this opportunity is given to us in this human birth alone, and we saw in detail about that. And the one who fails to know himself in this lifetime, such a person goes from death to death to death to death. And then in the 5th verse it was told that if the one has attained, how does he attain it? He attains it, and the example given here in the 5th verse was that Brahman is seen in the self as one sees in the mirror, a perfect reflection, without any distortion, without any imagination, without any idea, without any thought. It's a perfect reflection. And how he sees himself in the various other worlds of existence, in the mains, in the Gandharva, that was also told. And it was also said that in the Hiranyagarbha, that in all those, and in the Hiranyagarbha he expresses as the light and shadow, meaning that he is the light and the world is the shadow. And in this manner, or you can say it that way, or it is as clear as how Swamiji explains is that as clear the white marker is on the blackboard, that clear is the light against the darkness in the total mind. So, and in the total mind there is no doubt about anything, but yet you have gone to the total mind to enjoy the fruits because of all the merits you have collected, and eventually by the grace of the divine only, a person who is in the total mind gets the chance to shift his attention from the totality of enjoyments to the Supreme Self. And so there also it is a bondage only, till you don't get liberated. So we are asked, bypass, don't get into that, don't get into the step-by-step liberation. It's a long process, it's a hard process, it's a energy-consuming process, and there are many possibilities of many falls along the way. So find your way direct to the witnessing consciousness. And now we are in the 6th verse. Indriyanam pruthak bhavam udayastamayau chayata pruthak utpadyamananam matva dhiro na shochati. And this is in the 6th valli, the last section of the 2nd chapter. It says, a wise man, knowing well the separateness of the existence of senses and their appearance and disappearance to be other than the self, grieves no more for them. Meaning, these senses are a funny thing. Continuously they are changing. I mentioned before that It has come before that eyes cannot do the job of the ears cannot do the job of the tongue cannot do the job of the skin cannot do the job of the nose, and this way each one is distinctly separate, different. And not only they are different, their causes are also different. How? The eye's cause is the sun, the light. The nose has come about because of the earth. The ears have come about because of the space. The tongue has come because of the water. The skin has come because of the air. And in this way, each one of their causes is different. Their expressions are different. Two things. Third thing, they are continuously changing. They are never holding on to one thing. The eyes are continuously, the ears are continuously wanting different, tired. What? Oh, I want what is some different music, some variety. It enjoys variety. The senses, they are addicted to variety. They want to see the more different, the flowers, the trees, the different shades of sunshine. The tongue also, it's not happy with only salad every day. It wants the curry, the cake, the custard, the toast, the porridge. Otherwise, have one meal every day, eat leaves. Survive, you can still survive. Dhruva did. Dhruva story I told you. I'm not going into that story now. He survived by eating leaves that were lying around him, and everything was fine. But no, we want variety, and this way they dissipate your energy. And here it is being told that recognize that senses are separate from the Atman. Atman is that Atman, the self within, is the unchanging principle. And your senses are continuously changing, born from different causes, giving different experiences, addicted to different experiences. Never happy with just one thing. So that which is changing must be because of some permanent substratum, and that permanent you are. Recognize this. So here the word that they used is the rising and setting. The rising and setting means, again another way you can see, the fourth way. So first we saw the cause was different, then we saw their expressions were different, each one cannot infiltrate into others' field of activity, and the third was that everything is changing. Fourth, that these senses, it seems in waking they are all very alive, but they refuse to go into the dream world. So what you see here, touch, feel, taste, in the waking world, that is not possible by these physical senses in the dream world. So they are rising when you wake up, they are subsiding when you sleep, and this is our experience. So that which is continuously rising and, what is the word here? Setting, it cannot be the truth. So recognize this. And in this way, every day when you go to sleep, all the senses, the five of them, they enfold themselves into their cause and refuse to express themselves till you don't wake up. And this way, all our miseries and sorrows are on account, first level of misery is on account of these senses. Control the senses, control the senses. Discipline the senses. They must go where you decide that they should go. If you are looking at something which is not good, you should be able to close your eyes and not see it. It's not, okay, let me see what is going on. Like in my class, one girl, she was only 4 years old when she started. And she is very, all 4-year-old, hyper. jumping around. And from far, the moment she gets out from the car, Swamiji! She comes running and screaming comes inside. And she was excited. First day she is going to the class of Swamiji, and she has, her sister already comes, only 3 years elder to her, but she has taught her all the mantras, the incantations. So she knows already quite a lot. But she was excited, and her parents were not sending her because she is too hyper. Hyper means just like a small child, not hyper, but very active. And that day she came and she sat down and we all chanted the mantras, and she's again and again looking at me. See, I can chant, and smiling away, feeling important. She has come to the first class. And then came meditation afterwards. And then she has never sat in meditation, and she sat in meditation. Now, for a 4-year-old child to keep her eyes closed consciously is a difficult job. So, she closed her eyes and kept it closed. But after some time, and I was watching her, I said, stop moving your legs, stop playing with your hands, stop doing your eyes like this. And she's checking what doing like this. And she checked and then again closed. And then after some time, after 2-3 minutes, scratching here, scratching there, and then when now no more stimuli for her. The problem was the mind is wanting to see. Then suddenly she's seeing whether I am meditating or not. So she opens her eyes slowly, like this she is watching. I said, close your eyes. You are not supposed to check if I am doing meditation or not. This is one part. The other part, another boy started coming to the class, about a bit elder to her, maybe 6-7 months elder to her. And she said, like a boss, you sit next to me. And so before I came to the class, she's already got him in line. You sit, you keep your back straight, and you have to close your eyes. And in her language, local language, she's saying, you have to chant all the mantras. I can chant all of them. So he doesn't know anything. And meditation began, and she's saying, she caught his hands, she's put like this. And I'm just watching. And when the meditation started, now she has done 1 or 2 months, so she's expert now, So she's, and suddenly from here she says, and suddenly she nudges him. Look at Swamiji and do the meditation. Close your eyes. Whatever I used to tell her, she's telling him now. Close your eyes. Breathe. Keep your head straight. This is senses. A small child finds it very difficult. And we are like small children. Even worse sometimes. So, control your miseries, meaning don't allow the miseries to come in, and the first gateway of miseries to enter into your heart is the senses. If the senses are controlled, about 60% of the problem is taken care of. If the mind is purified, another 30-40% is taken care of. Then intellect is left. In the intellect, maybe that 5-10% of its ideas, its concepts, its imaginations, that can be dealt with by giving it a proper direction. So the frontier that we have to conquer is the senses, and that can only happen when we become convinced in our own minds that senses are not conducive to meditation, senses are not a helpful tool to calm our mind, and they must be controlled and made disturbance proof as regards to what they see, hear, touch, feel. We should not live our life pinned on the senses. We must see, there is a famous saying, seeing is believing, isn't it? And this is how the modern world lives. Seeing is believing. The whole advertising industry is thriving on that seeing is believing. They make you believe that this product is good. After you buy, you scream, who cares? They have sold. Hmm. But here, on the spiritual path, seeing is not believing. Believing is seeing. It's totally the opposite way. So you believe. Don't believe what the senses tell you, because what the senses are telling you is a distorted reality. What your intellect can intuit is the actual reality. So let the senses and the mind follow the dictates of your intellect, and that intellect you convince what values, what it should be seeking, what it should be seeing, what it should be hearing, what experience does it want, which is conducive for its journey forward. And then automatically these gross instruments, the senses and the mind, they will follow this fellow, the intellect, the intellectual convictions. But here we see majority of the people are following, the intellect is following the senses. And therefore so much problem in the society. There is no trust between each other. The trust doesn't come. How can trust come when what your eyes are showing right now, the very next moment it changes? What they are seeing right now, after some time, after 1 day, 2 days, that person is different. Continuously changing, and that which is changing cannot give you a permanent experience. And this way it is told, control that, control the senses, control the mind, control the intellect, and come to recognize your essential nature. And when a person is tareti sokam atmavid, and the person who comes to know himself as the essential effulgent nature within himself, and not a person, and not consider himself to be the senses, not consider himself to be the mind, not consider himself to be the intellect, such a person becomes free of miseries. Even if the intellectual conviction is there and you do not live at a sensory level, but you live at a level of your conviction that I am the essential nature, okay, I have not known, but I am going to know it in my life, automatically you withdraw from the sensory living. Such a person automatically withdraws, because continuously he is inspired to know who he is essentially, the self within, that unchanging substratum. And for such a person, miseries that are common for the world, they are absent for him. And such a person eventually comes to abide in himself. And here now in the 7th and the 8th verse, which have to be read together, it says, Indriyebhya param manaha manasa sattvam sattvadadhi mahanatma mahato vyaktamuttamam. Beyond the senses is the mind, beyond the mind is the intellect, beyond the intellect is the great Atman, superior to the great Atman is the unmanifest Prakriti, avyakta para purushaha vyapako linga evacha yam nyatva muchyate jantuhu amrutatvam cha gacchati. It says, and verily beyond the unmanifest Prakriti is the all-pervading Purusha, devoid of all distinctive marks, knowing whom the creature, the knower, is emancipated and he attains immortality. So now what was told in the 7th verse, I have already covered. That he goes beyond the senses. He must intuit that there is a conscious principle which is the substratum as compared to the senses. That then once you have controlled the senses, then what? Then the journey is given that beyond the senses is the mind, understand, not the other way around. Majority of the society is living upside down, So understand once you understand how you are made up, it will be a tool. Information is knowledge. If I understand, my friend in Sydney, he was sitting on the laptop. I go, what are you doing? He is a brainy fellow, and he is trying to track what is the pattern in the in the currency market. So continuously the Australian dollar is fluctuating a lot nowadays. In last 3-4 months, it has gone from 70-80 cents to $1 equal to US dollar and stronger than US dollar, and again coming down and going up. So people have made millions and billions in that fluctuation. And he is checking, how can I do it also? So he doesn't want to put his money first. He says, I am on an experimental basis. First I have created a program which is going to create a pattern. And I have put only $10, $50, maybe $100, and he is seeing if his program is working, and wherever it shows some anomalies, he fixes that. And eventually he says in few months time it will be ready. And then once I see a set pattern of return, that the return is more than the loss over an extended period of time, then I will put my money in. See? Information is knowledge. When you know how something works, then you can utilize it for your benefit. But when you don't know, it's just taking you for a ride. You buy shares, for example, and the whole Australia is buying shares. But what do you do with shares? When the market is high, you should sell it in cash. But some people, some of them I know, they keep the shares. And someone told, please sell, this is the best time to sell. They didn't. Then that particular share value went all the way down to $20, $30. What's the point? Oh, I should have sold it at that time. Repentance, misery. And then again it is coming up now. Oh, we should sell, we should sell, we should sell. You have to take action. But point I'm making here through this example is, when you know the patterns, when you know the information, then you can act upon it. Then ignorantly you can't be blissful. You have to take charge. And here it is, they are telling you how to take charge of your own instruments. Not your personality, your instruments. And first they told in the previous verse, recognize there is an unchanging principle as compared to the senses, and once you have known that, then understand that beyond the senses is the mind which functions through the senses, and beyond the mind is the intellect, and beyond the intellect is the great Atman. In this thought we have done it before, so there is no point repeating. Behind the senses is the mind, behind the mind is the intellect, the cognitive faculty, the discriminating faculty, and beyond the intellect is the great Atman. Great Atman means the total mind. The consciousness expressing through total mind is the great Atman, the great self. So, and beyond the great self then comes into the next line says, Mahato Avyaktam Uttamam, and beyond the great, the total mind, or the great, the total consciousness expressing through total mind is the avyakta, is the unmanifest, is the void, is the emptiness, is the nothingness. And beyond that, then it says, and verily beyond that void, beyond that emptiness is the all-pervading Purusha, the all-pervading conscious principle. And what is this conscious principle? It is alingaha. It is avyaktat to para purushaha. Para means beyond. Beyond the unmanifest is the purushaha, conscious principle. Vyapako linga evacha. And it is all pervasive, and linga evacha, and it does not have any distinguishing marks. It does not have any distinguishing marks. So don't imagine, I saw a light, I heard a sound, I heard someone chanting Om, and I was seeing the outline, but I just missed it. Nothing like that. It is not an experience, it is does not have a word. Then what are you saying that it is Purusha, conscious principle? We are just saying it is conscious principle. Something has to be used. But when you get to that point, there is no mark, distinguishing marks, there are no signs. Signs are only for the mind to recognize, but mind cannot reach there. So recognize when you get beyond the emptiness, when you go beyond the total mind, which is the void, and we don't have to go, that is the process, one way. But we are so told, you can bypass also. Remember, don't forget that. You can bypass, you don't have to go to the total mind. It may be fascinating, but you will elongate your journey unnecessarily. So, Purusha devoid of all distinctive marks, knowing whom the knower is emancipated, attains salvation, gains liberation, becomes immortal, becomes eternal. See? So again, the same journey, so many times in this Upanishad it is being repeated. Why? Does it think that we are foolish? No, the Upanishad is very, very compassionate. It knows that we will again become body identified. Again, the moment class is over, again we will be thinking about tea. And after the tea, again we'll come for the class and again we'll be thinking about the lunch. So there is no end to this sensory living. It takes a certain amount of, initially a certain amount of willpower, but greater than willpower is a certain amount of intense desire to want to know the truth. And that's why it was told in one of the previous verses, yesterday we saw that the one who is seeking the reality, he must put all the efforts in one go. Chalo, yaar, enough. For so many years I have been touching and tasting and wanting and withdrawing and wanting to it and withdrawing it and never putting 110% into it. Isn't it? You can't say, I am trying to get married. Either you are married or you are not married. You can't say, I am trying to sleep. Either you are asleep or you are awake. There is no grey area in between. And what we are as spiritual seekers are in grey area. We intellectually we know we want the reality, we want the bliss, and we want to be peaceful and happy. But at the same time, this world is also beautiful. Look at the sunrise. Oh, look at the sunshine. Ah, look at the top of the mountain. Oh, look at the flower. Look at that lizard. Look at that squirrel. Look at that rat in the house who ate my cake. So that becomes more exciting. So, and this way, all we are doing is we are shortchanging ourselves, our own happiness. It says, put all the efforts in one go. How much time do you have left? Swamiji, I am 73. Swamiji says, only? I am 50. I am also getting there. Whether you are 73, whether you are 50, whether you are 40, whether you are 30, does not matter. Here age does not matter, because none of us here sitting and listening to this lecture knows whether at the end of lecture you will be alive or not. Nobody knows when death comes. But everyone wants to believe that, all those mishaps, that sudden death happens to others, it will never happen to me. Don't be surprised, because by the time you get surprised, everything will be over. That's the joke. So take charge, get through this in one massive effort. If the rocket wants to break through the gravity of the earth, it takes about 7 minutes to go into the space. But if the rocket says, so much petrol I have, so much solid fuel I have, let me go around the world and then go into space. If the pilot thinks, the astronaut thinks, if he starts going around, let me see how America looks from up there, now let me go and see India, the spiritual land, let me go to China, the dam I want to see, the Yangtze River Dam. By the time he does this, the petrol is finished. He will fall back to earth. Isn't it? So what does he do in the rocket? The shortest way out of the Earth's atmosphere is taken. Not the longest, shortest way. And all the energy, it is not, oh, I have to conserve my petrol, I have to conserve my solid fuel. No, full blast. And in that one thrust of massive force, that whole rocket is thrown into the space. Isn't it? That's exactly what we have to do in our life. If we keep doing slowly, energy also finishes and eventually we'll find ourselves back from where we started. If you appreciate what was just said, don't forget it after the class. So here, the teacher is saying that when you come to, see, just for example, I'll give you, with regards to linga. Linga, like when we are on the earth, we are in space, and in this space we have certain directions, isn't it? East, west, north, south, northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest. Correct? Once you go beyond the earth's gravitational force and land yourself into the space, which is beyond the earth, there is no wind, there is no gravity. Is there north, south, east, west, the 8 direction in the space? Now how will you direct where to go? No, I am going south. There is no south. Where do you go? When you were on the earth, you know you have to go up. Now where will you go up? In space, where will you go up? There is no up, there is no down. So directions are 0. Exactly the same way. So the directions are imaginations in space for us to reach from one place to the other. So it is helpful on the planet. But when you reach the space, that same thing which was helpful, it is no longer helpful. So you have to drop, no directions. Same way, all the supports that you take, here the senses have to be controlled, the mind has to be purified, the intellect has to be made single pointed, you take the support of Om and the different thoughts that are being given, that you have to go beyond the void and etc. And then, oh, now what will be the indication that I have reached it? No indication. No direction. Nothing, there is nothing there for you to recognize. There is nothing there for you to recognize. Why? Only you are there. How can you recognize yourself? You are it. And when you reach this point, this is called samadhi. When recognition can take place only when there is a thought in the mind, isn't it? Discovery can take place only when there is a thought in the mind that, oh, I have come to know. But when knowing is equal to being, there is no thought. There is no thought. It just is. And this is what is indicated. It is alinga. It is vyapako alinga evacha. That all pervasive reality that you reach after the void, the emptiness, there is no distinguishing mark. Then don't start imagining that it is like this or it is like that. If any of this, any idea is coming to your mind with regards to the reality, understand the intellect is tricking you. Can't we even feel nice about it? No. Feeling nice means again it's an emotion, it's a thrill, it's an ecstasy, it's a bliss. And if that bliss is coming as a thought in your mind, gone. It has got nothing to do with all this. If the bliss is coming, if any experience is taking place within you, if you do not get carried away by that bliss, by that experience, and continue to, I can't even say that. I was going to say, if you continue to think about the reality, you know that reality is the substratum because of which this experience is taking place. But when you come to abide in the reality, even that becomes zero. There is no one to say that an experience is taking place. Like you don't say that I am having an experience of pervading the body right now. Are you saying that? No. You are expressing through all the limbs, all the cells, and you not even once say that, oh, today I am manifesting only in my arms, not in my legs. You don't say that. It's a natural abidance, natural thought-free recognition that you are pervading the whole body. That every part of the body with all its different names is I. Correct? Same thing when you come to abide in the self, then it's a thought-free knowledge that everything is I. There is nothing other than me, other than I. Pardon me?
Maharaj calls the natural state.
The natural state. Even Maharishi Mahesh Yogi calls it the natural state. In Australia, they made a party also called Natural Party.
Oh, really?
Yes. The funny things happen. No, but he also calls it the natural. In scripture also it's called the natural state only. It's not the abnormal. This is the abnormal state. When you read this is the natural state. So in this way, the person who comes to abide in himself and who knows himself in this manner and becomes the reality, Brahmavid Brahmaiva Bhavati. The one who knows Brahman becomes Brahman. And for such a person, there is no, the scriptures say, for such a person again, there is no misery, there is no bondage, there is no birth, there is no death. He is liberated while living. And that is the glory of the perfection that you can achieve in this human birth. No other birth gives you this opportunity. This I cannot, the scriptures and from the scriptures as a teacher cannot stress more. That this is the most luckiest chance that we have in order to know ourselves. Don't waste it. In the 9th verse, Na sandrushe tishtati rupamasya na chakshusha pashyati kaschanainam hruda manisha manasa bhiklupto ya etad viduramrutaste bhavanti. It says, his form is not to be seen. No one beholds him with the eye. By controlling the mind, by the intellect and incessant meditation, he is revealed. Those who know this Brahman become immortal. The teacher is, the scripture, and in that scripture the teacher is telling the student, the disciple, that 9-year-old boy, that in the previous verse they said, you cannot, it does not have any distinguished marks, because the habit of objectivity is very difficult to drop. Over lifetimes and throughout this lifetime, only objectivity, that everything that I see, hear, touch, know, feel, taste, ideate, feel, everything is an objective knowledge which is gained from outside. Even a thought is an objective knowledge. Even an emotion is an objective knowledge. Even an idea or a concept is an objective knowledge. Objective knowledge, I know something. So which means the knower and the known are separate. I know you, so you are separate to me. I am the knower, you are the known. So when I say I I know that I have this concept, so that concept is the known and I am the knower. So who is this subject? So here, and this habit of knowing everything as separate to our essence is a very difficult thing, and that it goes away only by way of purification. There is no other method for it. So here, to correct the vision of his disciple that he might be looking for some marks of realization, which we all are guilty of sometime in our life. That, oh, I think that's it. The blue light came, the yellow light came. Is it a traffic signal or what? Sometimes green, sometimes yellow, sometimes amber. Okay, let go. Okay, red, let's stop. It's not a traffic signal inside your head. No signs. You have to, and here, so to reiterate that, he says, his form is not to be seen, meaning that form of that reality is not to be seen. Your mind cannot imagine. How can you imagine infinite? You know infinite means a large expanse with no end. But you cannot imagine how big that expanse is, what are its contours. You cannot even in your wildest dream imagine what its contours are, isn't it? Oh, they say there are many universes. Can you imagine how big this universe is? Have you ever seen it? One day I'll have to show.
Not in my own eyes.
Nobody has seen it. Scientists haven't seen it. It requires an intuitive eye. So, here when it says his form is not seen, no one beholds him with the eye. Meaning, just not the eye. The five senses are defunct when it comes to the reality. They do not have entry into the sanctum sanctorum. Stay out. If you have not taken bath, if you are stinking, if you are wearing shoes, if you have not purified yourself and all that. Even if you go to a temple, nobody will say anything, but people will order, hey, you stay out there. Go take bath, come. For class also, I hope you have all taken bath. First is physical cleanliness. Then alone mental cleanliness will begin. Then alone intellectual cleanliness will begin. But if we are physically dirty early in the morning, forget about these Upanishads. Nothing will go in. Now don't tell me if someone has not taken. Okay? Let me remain in blissful ignorance and teach. Now, I'm sure every one of you have taken the shower. So, his form is not, no one can see through the five senses this reality. So, see, even just for example, if you want to go to Prime Minister, do you have if you say, I want to go and meet Prime Minister, will they just allow you into the Prime Minister's office? They'll say, you wait out there. We'll see when he is free, then we will see. And then you have to single-pointedly wait. First day, they don't allow you. Second day, they don't allow you. Third day, they don't allow you. When you surrender, they allow you. So, senses have to surrender. They have to recognize that we are nothing. Then the next faculty takes over. So no entry into the sanctum sanctorum. Na chakshusha pashyati, none can see him with the eyes, meaning none can see him with the naked sense organs, and in this way the point that is being made, that by controlling the mind by the intellect and incessant meditation. What happens in meditation when the mind gets purified and the intellect becomes single pointed, meaning it has gone beyond the total mind, it has come to the void, but it has not got lost in the void, it has not gone to sleep in the void, it has not become nonplussed in the void, it has not become fearful of the void. Then what happens if all these points what I just said are remembered? That's when you intuit the reality. That's when you intuit the reality. Otherwise, you'll be just looking at the emptiness and eventually go to sleep. Or look at that emptiness and come out of the emptiness and say, oh, I had a fantastic meditation. But what happened? What's next? You didn't go to the next point. And such people, every day they'll go to deep meditation, come to the void, but come back again and consider this world is real. We have all come across, probably it has happened to us also. So who will make that last jump? So our habit of watching that void, oh, acha, nothing. Now what? I think I have achieved everything. There is nothing after that. Unnecessarily for 30 years I was meditating. And they leave it. Some people I know who have left it. But when you come to that point, then who is the one who is watching, who is aware of the nothingness, who is aware of the void? And when this you have prepared yourself beforehand. So when you get to the void, automatically this question, an unstruck question clicks in and you are prepared. And intuitively the attention, the witness who is looking out at nothing becomes aware of itself. This is intuition. Intuition is not about the world. That is called prostitution of the witness. That is not intuition. Intuition is only when you become aware, intuit yourself. That, I have been, all the time I have been searching myself, but here I am. And this is without a thought. And then you recognize that it was the most easiest thing. Unnecessarily I controlled my senses, unnecessarily I went through period of purifying my mind. I could have caught my mind that myself. I was there when the senses were roaming around everywhere, when the mind was imagining everywhere, the intellect was conceptualizing about different things. I was always there. Why? It was such a simple thing. Why didn't I catch myself? But it is not easy to catch when all these are so active. But when you get there, it's so easy, isn't it? When you wake up, and not when you wake up, when you come back from work, my experience, when I used to come back from work and the dishes were left for me. 11 o'clock at night, I have to eat my meal and then wash the dishes. And I used to come. Every time I used to complain, you are all at home from 8 o'clock, you had your dinner and 3 hours you waited for me to wash the dishes, what is this? And I used to complain and one day I said, no, I am not going to complain. And I took charge. I said, no, I am not going to become miserable because of washing dishes, I am going to be happy. And the day I decided, I said, for 2 years, why did I suffer for nothing? Why didn't I think that washing dishes can be a happy affair? And I said, okay, with every dish, every negative thought is getting cleaned up. And this became my sadhana. See, lawn mowing used to be a big affair because we had a huge garden at the back before we built 2 houses. And it would take at least 1.5 hours to do the whole thing and trimming and this and that. But once you get into it, with the positive frame, no problem. But till you don't do it, it's a problem, isn't it? Same way here also. Once you come to know yourself, it was so easy. But till you have not reached there, it's so difficult. And so, here the journey is told to Nachiketa by the Lord of Death, that those who come to know the reality, the Brahman in this manner, by overcoming the senses, overcoming the mind, overcoming the intellect, beyond the total intellect, beyond the avyakta, meaning the void, the unmanifest. That void is the unmanifest. Unmanifest what? That unmanifest itself becomes the manifest called intellect, mind and the senses and then the whole world. And that unmanifest is the womb, the cause. So unmanifest the cause and mind, intellect, mind, senses and the entire world the effect. Now don't start thinking that the reality is the cause of the unmanifest. No. Reality is the uncaused cause. It has got no cause. It has not created the unmanifest. Unmanifest the ego had created. So, intuition, yet he says, intuition is the capacity to know the knowledge, and that knowledge is of the self. And this way, knowing the self, one becomes aware of the self, conscious of the self, and eventually abides in the self. And in this way, the teacher goes on to the next verse, verse 10. Yada panchavatishtante jnanani manasa saha buddhischana vicheshtati tamahu paramam gatim. When the five organs of knowledge are at rest together with the mind, and when the intellect ceases functioning, becomes calm, that state they call the highest. Again, another way the teacher is trying to tell the student what needs to come about. And what needs to come about? The continuous erratic behavior of the senses needs to be curbed. The irrationality of the mind needs to be curbed. Unnecessary imaginations and concepts that come in the intellect need to be curbed. And when everything has become calm and silent, the senses, this is what we call pratyahar. Only where pratyahar is a yogic term where the senses of their own accord are no longer wanting to go into the world and experience the world. They are not interested. Oh, this is interesting. This is interesting. This is interesting. This I never heard. Have you heard people sitting around? Nobody is talking to them, but they are overhearing because the ears are open. What can they do? And suddenly they pass a comment. Arey, but what did you say? What did you say? You didn't say anything to you. No, but I heard. Who asked you? Keep your ears closed. We are talking between ourselves. Who are you to suddenly butt in, Just because you have got ears doesn't give you a right to listen to everything that is going on. And imagine the misery of those yogis who have developed the ability to hear from far. They don't need to go to America. From here they can sit and listen to if they put their attention on that person there, whom they know, and they can hear the conversation he is having. How miserable that fellow must be. Wherever he puts attention, and then and nobody speaks good about anyone else in this world. Only on your face they will say how good you are. Behind only gossip going on. This fellow who can hear everything will be... So here the teacher is saying that calm your senses. And calm your senses means after I do my meditation, my senses will be calm. No. When you are interacting with the world, that's the moment you calm the senses. Do not allow them to react. Do not allow them to seek. Do not allow them to run after the sense stimuli of the world. Be content that whatever the world is throwing in front of the eyes, that's alone okay. Don't go and seek. The more you seek, window shopping. The more you do window shopping at the level of five senses, the more disturbed your personality will be. Always on the edge. You see those kids or those just those kids who have just got a job and a good packet in your pocket, in their pocket, and they don't know what to do with their life. So for that sensory satisfaction, what is their way? I have to relax. I need stress release. What are you going to do for? I'm going for shopping. That is their stress release. Or if they don't go shopping, what is the stress release? They become rakshasas, devils. How? They go to discotheques, get drunk and behave like they have never behaved before. And then repent afterwards. Oh, I don't know what happened to me. Why? How did I get into the jail? I found myself sleeping under the car in the car park. I thought it was my bed. How did that happen? Don't know anything. So that is the lowest way of living at the sensory level.
It's accepted now as actually a condition, retail therapy.
This is all modern psychology who themselves are patients.
In fact, it's even
These are all,
Australia.
I know, but these are all terms given by the psychiatrists who themselves are patients. And it goes, because then if they don't say it is retail therapy, then how will they do business? See? So what are we here for? To know the truth. To know the truth, these blabberings of this agitation of the senses, to attraction towards the objects of the world, this has to be taken in control. The horses must be in check. And how will the horses be in check? If the mind is in check. And what is the problem of the mind? Mind must be made calm. What is the problem of the mind? Desires, emotions. I think I'll be happy because of this. Oh, I think I'll be happy because of this. I think I'll be happy because of this, isn't it? So whatever the eyes see, oh, that is nice. Oh my God, this is also very nice. So what do I take? Do I buy this? Do I buy this? And in that decision itself, they have lost their peace. They have not even made the decision, but they have lost the peace. Senses do not lose the peace. Senses just become agitated. The mind loses its peace as a result of this agitation. Can't make a decision. Why? It has not been yoked into the intellect. So calm your mind. How do you calm your mind? How do you calm your mind?
Reining in the senses?
Huh?
Or reining in the senses?
By reining in the senses? But who will pull the mind back? The intellect will pull the mind back. The mind is the reins, senses are the horses. Mind cannot pull the horses. The senses will pull the reins this way, that way, and make the chariot drop. Chariot is the body. So mind cannot rein the senses. Horses are too strong, naturally. Reins are just stirrups, sometimes they break also. Break means suicide. So you need a strong charioteer, you need a strong conviction, you need a strong idea, you need a strong belief. The higher the belief, the higher the conviction, the stronger will be the hold on the stirrups. And if the reins are the stronger the reins are held, how dare the horses? They will only go, but they can't move anywhere because the reins are holding them tight. So mind by itself cannot be controlled. It has to be surrendered to the dictates of the intellect. This is the way. So here it is being told, when the five organs of knowledge are at rest together with the mind, and when the intellect ceases functioning, meaning becomes calm. What is the disease of the intellect? I told you before, it was imaginations, ideations, different concepts. Suddenly, in the seat of meditation, instead of thinking about the who am I, suddenly it will come. Yeah, but how does moon go around the sun? No. Moon goes around the earth. Suddenly the attraction towards cosmos comes. Suddenly attraction towards some unnecessary thing comes and you get distracted about it. Why? You have shown fascination towards that. So it comes and disturbs you. So at that time, how do you do it? Either you chant Om regularly, what exercise we are doing in the meditation, or you keep thinking about the reality if that works for you, and eventually that alone will, the steps are Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. What is Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi? Dharana is pegging your mind, intellect at a spot, at a point. And how do you peg your mind? Intellect. Intellect is thinking many things. So you are making it think, chant Om, chant Om, chant Om. But where do you chant Om? In the mind. But mind is so vast, something keeps coming in. So you grab a point, either the navel or the heart or the third eye, and fix the mind there and chant Om in that point again and again, again and again, again and again, again and again, not for one day, not for 2 days, as long as it is required. And you will become aware that sometimes when you are chanting the Om and your Om has become continuous flow without a break towards that point of focus, unbroken flow of Om or unbroken flow of contemplation on any theme, one theme, without too many words, just one. Then suddenly you lose this, you forget that you are concentrating at this point. Suddenly that point expands. This is all not given here, I am explaining. And you go beyond the space. And so first you go beyond the space and then you lose the sense whether you are chanting or not chanting. You get absorbed in that chanting that you can't even remember whether you are chanting or not. And that chanting slowly becomes slower and slower and slower. You lose the sense of time. How long I have been chanting? No idea. So the second parameter that binds us, that keeps us in bondage, first was space, second is time, and third is objectivity. So after pratyahara, after we have controlled and calmed our senses and mind, so senses are not agitated, mind is not leaking out of the senses of its own accord, then as you start concentrating your mind on the point, first parameter is the space, second parameter is the time, and the last is objectivity, that last thought of there is nothing now, that also has to be dropped. And you intuit the reality. That's when that is realization. That is abiding in the reality. And until and unless the senses, the mind and the intellect have not been made calm, have not been made sublimated, till then the ego self will not come to abide in its essential nature. The ego self will not come to abide in its essential self. The journey of a wave is to meet water. The distance is zero. Between a wave and a water, the distance is zero. The distance between the ego self and the infinite self is zero. But till the ego self feels that it has an independent existence, till then it needs to remove all the impurities that are becoming the cause of individuality. And once the last thread of impurity is removed from the mind, the self abides in the self of its own accord. And this way, practice meditation day in and day out. Spend as many sessions as possible. I told you, just listening is not enough, consolidation is also required. And that consolidation of the daily studies, discussions that you have between yourself, books that you read, satsangs that you listen, all that must be consolidated on the seat of meditation. Seat of meditation is not just an idle time pass. Chalo bhai, I am going to sit in meditation and do what? Acha, I saw a nice movie, okay, let's come back. It's not that. You have to take one idea, whatever that works for you, and then go and contemplate on it so that it takes you to the reality. It is a conscious process. It is not an automatic process. Senses and the mind will not happen, withdraw automatically. You have to be conscious every part of the journey. Only then you will intuit that I am the one, I am seeing the nothing. If you are allowing things to take over, emotions to take over, experience to take over, then when the final crux comes, you are still looking for an experience. You have not been in charge. So, again the teacher is telling the student what is the process to be pursued. Again he says, Tam yogamiti manyante sthiram indriya dharanam apramattastada bhavati yogo hi prabhavapyayav. The firm control of the senses they regard as yoga. Then the yogin becomes free from all the vagaries of the mind, and for the yoga is the subject to growth and decay. Just understand that so here it is told that yoga is good, but don't take that to be the ultimate. If you do not come to know your own essential nature on the seat of meditation, which is we are calling yoga, because in yoga is dharana, dhyan, samadhi, etc., what I just explained. If you do not come to the final destination and know that you are intuitively, the yoga has got no meaning, because you will wake up again. So yoga has gone, and again next sitting, again you will start doing your meditation, again you will get into the heights and again fall down after you come out of it. So continuously shunting process is going on. You go in, come out, go in, come out, go in, come out. Abidance is not taking place. So here it is being told that yoga is subject to growth and decay. You can grow, and if you don't reach the destination, you will come back to your ego self again when you are moving around in the world. And so beware. What else is told here? So yoga is aikagram paramam tapaha. To make the mind single pointed is the goal of yoga. And if that single pointed mind is not surrendered to the final destination, then that yoga has, that control has got no meaning. And in this way, that success can be possible only when the mind has been fixed in the reality. If anything else other than the theme of reality becomes the driving force in the mind and inspiration in the mind, then that journey will never complete. You are falling short of the final destination. And this way, once you know that these are the pitfalls along the way, you are better educated, and then you will be careful not to imagine other things except thinking about the cave of your heart, who am I, or chanting Om, and which all these few examples that I just gave are the ones who remind you who you essentially are, and you do not get carried away by the various experiences. And this way, even though this path is the shortest in the Vedanta, you can go directly, but it is also the razor's edge. If you do not reach it, you intellectually suffer if you don't realize. So get inspired, put all your efforts into it in one go. Decide by next year everything should be over. Why not? What is there for you to lose? Nothing. There's only to gain. But then you will see what fire of determination comes once you make the decision. Once you recognize enough is enough, how much I'm going to, it's like the fire is hot. Oh, is it hot? When I did fire walking, the fire is hot. Yes, it's 1000 degrees Fahrenheit or centigrade. And it's about how many? About 15 steps long. And just looking at the fire was raging. All the wood is there. It is raging. Looking at it, will I be able to do it? The teacher says, yes, you can do it. And I said, but there is doubt how I am going to do it. But I have seen other people do it in videos, but I have not seen myself do it. And I am seeing in front of me a fire which is as high as me. And then it burnt, and then the charcoals were there, and the charcoal is not dark, it is glowing. And you go near and he made us stand around the fire, and we are standing, and we are sweating away because of the heat. And he says, now we have to walk on this. Are you ready? Nobody said, yes, I am ready. At least I didn't say that I am ready. Then he took us into the room and he made us, you can say, psych yourself, brainwash yourself, convince yourself, yes, I can do it. Yes, I can do it. Yes, I can do it. Close your eyes. Imagine that I am walking over the fire. Yes, I can do it. Yes, I can do it. And after 1 hour of repeating it again and again and again and again and meditation, then when I came to the fire, he says, can you do it? What I have practiced for 1 hour? Yes, I can do it. He said, go. And he pushed me. No, he didn't push me, he nudged me like that. Because he will not allow anyone to go if he thinks he is not ready. That conviction he needs to hear from you. That fearlessness he needs to feel. And when he saw, he pushed. And we went. And while I was in the middle of it, the thought came, what if? And the moment it came, I ran. I ran. But after I ran, on the other side there is a pool of water. I put my feet in there and I came out and I found only 2 blisters. I said, this is fantastic, yeah. Never in my life I have walked on fire. Suddenly a new sense of inspired. No, I want to do it again. He says, this time he didn't ask me, are you ready? He said, go. Then, second time, third time, fourth time, then I was so confident because it felt like I am walking on clouds. I am walking on feathers. And then I said, teacher, I told him that this is not, I want to try whatever was going on. I said, I want to try piggyback. And I picked one fellow up on my back and I walked over. And still I am flying on, walking on air. Amazing experience. So, point is, initially fear is there. But if you prepare, remove all the doubts out of your mind. Do not allow anything to distract you from the goal that you have set for yourself. In spite of the fear, you take the plunge. You continue to focus on the ultimate. And after that, this was very, it didn't feel like fire at all. And this is nothing. The Fiji people, they walk on hot rocks. We are walking on charcoal wood. They walk on hot rocks. In Aborigines also, if someone has committed a crime, they make them walk through the hot rocks. If you have committed a mistake, you will burn yourself. So, if you have got ulterior motive of knowing the truth, if you have some doubt about it, if the conviction is not 100% that I am that, then you are not allowed into the sanctum sanctorium. You are not allowed in that kingdom. You have to wait outside. So, in this way, it is a razor's path. It is a sharp edge. It's like a rope walking, continuously balancing. And if you fall, the rope walker never walks only 1 feet above the ground. He is up there. If he falls, he will break some limb. He has to be very expert. He has to maintain absolute equanimity in order to walk only on the rope and not get distracted by anything. So you are walking a tightrope to the reality. Do not get distracted by anything. Otherwise the fall is great. And in majority of the seekers, the fall is coming every day. They become habituated by it. So get out, recognize how many times we have fallen, how many more times we will fall. Let's finish it off once. How many? 7 Upanishads, 2 more to go. नैव वाचा न मनसा प्राप्तुं शक्यो न चक्षुषा अस्तीति ब्रुवतोऽन्यत्र कथं तद उपलभ्यते. The self cannot be reached by speech, nor by mind, or nor even by the eye. How can it be realized otherwise than from these who say that it exists? A question. We will answer it in the next class. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari